At the beginning, it was shown that a boy was thinking to himself, wondering what the meaning of this situation was. The boy and girl were in bridal clothes while a man was removing her veil. The boy was in shock and thought that he had been single until he became 25. To think that he, who was mocked as being the Winter Bear, would have such a cute girl as his bride made his face tense. The girl then asked in a small voice what was wrong. Addressing him as Prince Saryu, he was stunned, thinking that she was too cute, with shock in his eyes. He noticed her silky silver hair and skin as smooth as an egg, and he thought that to think a girl like her was his wife was unbelievable. She looked tense and asked if her appearance bothered him. He shouted that it wasn't that. He said he just didn't know what to do because she looked very cute, and that someone like him didn't deserve a girl like her. He said he didn't even know where to begin and repeated that it wasn't that, but that he couldn't keep up with this, or rather, his words were flustered, and she was stunned by his reaction. Then, suddenly, Saryu's mother spoke, telling him that he understood, didn't he, that today was the engagement ceremony. His face became tense as his mother continued, saying that from then on, he would be living together with her until the wedding ceremony in half a year, and that he mustn't engage in any sort of inappropriate behavior. Her face looked scary as she warned him, and he was scared, wondering if his sanity could hold on. The scene then shifted back 3 months. A carriage was moving towards the city, and someone pointed outside, saying they were almost there. It was Saryu's mother, who said she was looking forward to it and called out to him. He responded quietly with, "Yes, mother," while she laughed. He thought that on that day, he was in one of the neighboring countries, the Caravan United Kingdom, or so it should have been. He thought that his mother's purpose was the reception that followed, in short, his arranged marriage. He felt something wasn't right. To think that his mother would bring him, the third son, instead of the king or crown prince. Even though he was a prince, he was already 25 years old, and the fact that he didn't even have a fiancée would also make one worried. But there was no big reason. Simply put, it was because he was not popular. He thought about his elder brother, the crown prince, Leonidas L. Tidros, and his second brother, Michaela L. Tidros, who had married into another country. Michaela was a beautiful, androgynous nobleman who resembled their mother, Queen Tidros. But as for him, he took after his rugged father, King Tidros. He was the third son, Saryu L. Tidros. On top of that, every winter he led the knights to patrol the frontier. While crushing bandits and rebels, he had earned the nickname, the Winter Bear of Tidros. He thought that back then he had skipped shaving his beard, but still, a bear? Really? Because of such a nickname in the capital, girls called him scary, gross, and smelly. He was avoided, and his potential partner meetings were complete failures. He sighed, thinking he was fine, staying single for the rest of his life. He just wanted to end this peacefully and go home quickly, even though that was what he was thinking at the time. Then, it was seen that someone shouted that the engagement was off, pointing towards a bride while holding another girl. Saryu was stunned and wondered what was going on, and what they meant by saying the engagement was off. The crown prince of the Luminous Kingdom, Arios Luminous, was there. Saryu wondered what Arios was thinking. The one standing beside Arios was male. Some people around whispered that he was from the hardy Baron family, while another said he was the crown prince's lover. Saryu heard them and thought that he was what one would call a public mistress. He saw Arios's official fiancée, Sitoen Baramoa. He couldn't see her face because of the veil. When he first saw them, he thought it was like a moving white cocoon. However, he had heard that they had been living together for 2 whole years prior to the engagement. He thought that to receive this kind of treatment from her fiancé must be painful. Arios then said that he came to this decision because she had repeatedly committed inhumane acts towards his beloved male. First of all, even though Male tried to talk to her, she ignored him many times, didn't she? Saryu thought that it wasn't strange for someone of lower status to speak to royalty in the first place, and depending on the situation, one might have no choice but to pretend not to hear. Arios continued, saying that even during tea parties, she left out only Mile and treated him like an outcast. Saryu thought there was no way a baron's daughter could participate in a royal tea party. With a tense face, Saryu thought that these two were way too naive about the world. Arios was laughing, and the girl in his arms was in tears. Saryu thought they didn't even know the hierarchy of high society. The girl in Arios's arms spoke with tears in her eyes, saying that while dancing, she was deliberately bumped into as well. Saryu wondered if it wasn't her who bumped into others instead. The people sitting in their seats whispered to each other, and Saryu thought that all the attendees were looking at the crown prince with cold eyes. He looked at Lady Sitoen and thought that she also endured such unreasonable accusations well. Then he wondered if she had given up, thinking it was pointless to say anything. Suddenly, someone called out to him, and it was his mother, who asked if he didn't have a lover yet. He wondered what was with the sudden question, and replied that he didn't have one. His mother said, "I see," with a smile, and says, "If that's the case, let's take that young lady with a smile." And he thought, "Huh? What is she saying?" Thinking that she was treating this like saying, "Could you wrap her up for me?" so casually. He said, "Geez, mother." Then Arios shouted that someone with an ugly heart like her could never possibly be his wife. Saryu thought he was still going on about that. Arios smiled and said that to begin with, someone with an appearance like hers could never be his wife, and asked if she didn't realize they were not well suited for each other. This made Saryu's face tense as he thought that right there in public, Arios was insulting a woman's appearance. He stepped forward and shouted angrily for Arios to take those words back. Arios looked at him and said, "What?" Saryu thought that even though Arios was the crown prince of another country, what he had just said could not be overlooked. People also stood up, agreeing, saying, "That's right." And another said, "Take it back." The bride looked at Saryu and asked, "Huh? Why are you?" addressing him as Atsuhito, and Saryu was stunned and confused upon hearing that. Saryu saw her and thought that Atsuhito was an unfamiliar name. He wondered what language it was from. Beside him, Arios thought that this should be the first time he and Sitoen had met. Holding Mile, he said firmly that no matter what anyone said, his statement wouldn't change. He shouted while laughing that the engagement was broken off. Suddenly, someone shouted, "You fool." It was a fat man, and both Arios and Male were shocked. Saryu covered his ears. Arios turned and clicked his tongue, saying, "Shh, father." The fat man was angry. Then another man walked towards Sitoen, and the fat man pleaded, "Lord Baramoa, please, please forgive us." Lord Baramoa replied that there was no need to apologize, addressing him as King Noi. King Noi was shaking. Lord Baramoa told Sitoen that he would take his foolish daughter back with him. He extended his hand towards her, telling her to return to the kingdom of Tanya. Saryu thought that this gentleman was Miss Sitoen's father and that the kingdom of Tanya was known for its abundant mineral resources. He realized if the engagement was broken off, the country's loss would be immeasurable, and King Noi must have wanted to stop this at all costs. Lord Baramoa smiled, and Saryu thought that with the crown prince behaving like that, it was hopeless. Suddenly, someone said, "Excuse me." It was Queen Tidros, Saryu's mother. She asked King Noi and Lord Baramoa if she might speak. Saryu was shocked, thinking, "Huh, mother?" She extended her arms, and Saryu realized she was offering an escort. King Noi addressed her, saying, "Queen Tidros, what an unexpected place to meet." Queen Tidros smiled and said it had been since the evening party in the Caravan Kingdom, addressing Lord Baramoa. Lord Baramoa replied that he was deeply honored that someone like him would be addressed. Queen Tidros asked King Noi if the engagement was really going to be broken off. King Noi, with a scared face, denied it quickly, saying it was not at all. Lord Baramoa said breaking it off was fine, and that he would take his foolish daughter back to the kingdom of Tanya. King Noi looked even more frightened, and Saryu thought with a sigh that his mother always made everything black and white. Queen Tidros looked at the shaking Lord Baramoa angrily and said she could imagine his feelings and that it was poor treatment for a young lady. She added that if she didn't say something here, even though Arios was her son, she would have struck him. Saryu was shocked, thinking that was close. He almost got hit. Queen Tidros then said that, as expected of a young lady educated to be crown princess, her bearing and composed attitude were truly impressive. Sitoen lowered her head as Arios and Male watched. Queen Tidros asked her if she spoke Tidros, and Sitoen replied that she was still quite inexperienced but knew enough to get by in daily life. Queen Tidros gave her a sharp look, and Saryu thought how modest she was, as her pronunciation was quite good. He thought it was as expected from someone raised to be crown princess, because for royalty, learning languages for negotiations with other countries was essential. Male asked, confused, what they were saying. Arios replied that Male didn't need to know. Saryu wondered why his mother was asking such things. Queen Tidros then addressed Lord Baramoa, saying that though it was presumptuous of her, would it be possible to welcome his daughter as her foolish son's companion? Saryu was shocked. Queen Tidros explained that although Saryu was a prince, being the third son meant his standing was naturally considered lower, even though she was requesting for a daughter raised to be crown princess to marry him. Saryu thought to himself to forget backing off. It wasn't just lowering, it was him. They were talking about the bear man with a losing streak in matchmaking. He wondered if his mother had some kind of filter that made him look like a handsome, cute guy. He thought such a proposal was bound to be rejected. However, Lord Baramoa replied, "No, Your Highness." Saryu was stunned. Lord Baramoa continued, saying her words were too kind, but as a vassal of the King of Tanya, he must first ask the king's intentions and would give a formal reply after that. Queen Tidros replied that, of course, she understood. Lord Baramoa then added that as a father, rather than entrusting his daughter to the luminous royal family, he would prefer to entrust her to the prince who had stood up for his daughter's honor first. As they turned to leave, Saryu's face turned tense. He called out, Excuse me, Lord Baramoa." Lord Baramoa turned and looked at him. Saryu said that in appearance, he didn't resemble his mother or brothers, and he spent most of his life with the Night Order, so he wasn't good at handling women. Above all, he was the third son. Though he had been granted a duke title, he couldn't hope for anything more than that. He added that he didn't have the cleverness to navigate the court well either. Queen Tidros thought, wondering what her child was saying, asking herself if he was trying to ruin this good opportunity. But Saryu thought that his mother probably thought that, yet he felt he must make this clear. He requested that they not decide for the young lady, and even if he received a rejection, he, Saryu el Tidros, wouldn't be hurt or bothered in the least. He asked that they prioritize the young lady's opinion. Lord Baramoa was stunned and then smiled. He said that the prince's nickname was well known in their country too. Saryu asked if he meant the man with a losing streak in matchmaking, but Lord Baramoa laughed, saying that was absurd and such classified information was new to him. He clarified that it was the nickname, the Winter Bear of Tidros. He thanked Saryu for standing up for his daughter that day. Saryu was embarrassed. Male called from behind, addressing him as Bear-san. Saryu reacted with shock, thinking about it. Then, 2 months later at his palace, he received a letter stating there was a formal engagement proposal from the Kingdom of Tanya. He was in shock, thinking he was sure it would be rejected. After that came the furious preparations for the engagement ceremony. His adjutant, Raoul, repeatedly told him the procedures until his ears felt numb. In the end, he met the day of the ceremony without even knowing Miss Sitoen's face. His first brother, Leonius, commented that it was an unexpected find, saying it was good that Luminous's crown prince was an idiot. He explained her name was Sitoen Baramoa, 20 years old, and the Baramoa family traced back to the Tannian royal family. 2 years ago, she came to the kingdom of Luminous for bridal training, but Crown Prince Arios didn't like Miss Sitoen's appearance, and their relationship never grew closer. Leonidas laughed and said Saryu shouldn't get his hopes up about her face either. Saryu thought his brother had such a foul mouth and that those black-hearted princes probably thought she didn't expect much from his appearance either. It was mutual, he thought, but when he revealed her veil, he saw her face and thought she was cute as hell. He got a nosebleed and sat on the floor while covering his nose, wondering where the ugliness was. Sitoen asked if he was all right, calling him Prince Saryu. Saryu called out to his brothers, telling the Tidros royal family to gather up. They commented that she was an incredibly beautiful young lady, and another agreed, saying, "Indeed." Saryu panicked, thinking it was no laughing matter and wondering what he would do with such a beautiful girl. He shook Raoul, shouting that the other party was him. His brother told him to calm down, warning that Raoul was going to die, and reminded him not to keep his fiancée waiting too long, as the ceremony was still left. Saryu thought that was right, remembering the engagement ceremony. He stood in front of her, blushing while thinking, kiss on the forehead. He apologized for losing his composure earlier, saying that he was in a panic, not knowing what to do because she was too cute. He said someone like him didn't deserve a girl like her, and he didn't even know where to begin, but that wasn't it. Then he asked for her permission, and she closed her eyes, replying, "Yes." Saryu thought that her cuteness was destructive, that her defenselessness was cute, and that her very existence was a sin. He compared her to small animals he often saw in snowy mountains, like rabbits or a white marten with big round eyes, supple and soft to the touch. Then he scolded himself, wondering what he was thinking. He got closer to her, placing his hands on her shoulders as he leaned forward, telling himself it was no good and to cast away impure thoughts. He gave her a light kiss on the forehead, then leaned back. Everyone clapped. When he opened his eyes, he saw her smiling, and he was stunned. He fell down, and his brother shouted, "Saryu!" Saryu wondered if his sanity would hold out for 6 months until the wedding. Saryu thought he somehow managed to safely finish the engagement ceremony. That night, Saryu was sitting and asked Raoul why he was crying. Raoul, while wiping his tears, said he was just happy that the captain got engaged. Saryu thought Raoul was a man who would turn 30 this year. Raised as brothers, he served as vice-captain in the Night Order. He was reasonably popular, but Saryu said that Raoul used to say he couldn't think of getting married and leaving the captain behind. Raoul, with a smile, said now he could marry without worry. Saryu smiled, and Raoul said for years the captain couldn't get a girlfriend because his clothes and hair were lame, and it was worth continuing to say that. Saryu apologized for that. Saryu thought that aside, he needed to think about what came next. His older brothers just gave him a stern warning too. His brother told Saryu to absolutely not make any blunders, and Saryu was scared. His brother told him to live together after the engagement ceremony, as that was a direct order from King Tanya. It was probably because of the previous broken engagement, but it would be a disaster if the bride's belly was big during the blessing. Saryu told his brother he worried too much and asked how many times he was going to say this. His brother said, "Well, but seeing how Saryu was at the dinner party, right?" His second brother said the whole time Saryu had this face like, "My wife is so cute, isn't she?" Saryu stayed silent. His brother added that besides, she apparently had a dragon mark too, so he would have to be even more careful. Saryu thought about the dragon mark. From what he had heard, the kingdom of Tanya was also called the Dragon Country, and dragons were deeply involved in the founding of the nation. Only people of the royal family, and among them, only special ones got scale tattoos called dragon marks. Therefore, marrying someone with a dragon mark was an incredibly honorable thing. Then someone knocked on the door, and they turned to see it was the family butler. The butler told Saryu that tomorrow, Lord Vandel would be paying a visit, and they just received word. Saryu's face turned annoyed. In the hallway, Saryu shouted that it was too sudden while walking. The butler said Lord Vandal wanted to congratulate his best friend's engagement as soon as possible. That is what he said. Saryu shouted angrily that there was no way, thinking that guy was imagining him panicking and enjoying it. Saryu thought about that bastard anyway. He must tell Sitoen too. They stood at Sitoen's door. The butler told Saryu it was just a greeting. Just a greeting. He understood. Raoul said if Saryu stayed longer than 15 minutes, he was barging into the room. Saryu told him to shut up, he knew, and knocked at the door, thinking that still, entering a lady's bedroom made him nervous. He called out that it was him, Saryu, and Sitoen told him to please come in. He opened the door and saw Sitoen sitting on a chair in her nightgown, smiling, which made Saryu's heart skip a beat. She stood up and thanked him for his hard work earlier. Saryu said, "Ah, no," and, scratching his face, said he came to say good night. Sitoen, touching her chin, apologized and asked if she should have come to see him instead. Saryu, in panic, said no, that wasn't it, actually. They sat, and Saryu told her that a friend was coming tomorrow, so would she meet him? Sitoen said, of course, it would be an honor. Saryu thought, phew, and asked if there was anything inconvenient about the mansion. If so, please tell him, and he'd handle it each time. Sitoen said no, everyone had been very kind to her. Maid Eaton was grateful too, she said with a smile. Saryu thought about Eaton. Come to think of it, she was crying a lot during the engagement ceremony too. Eaton, while crying and wiping her tears, had said she was so happy for Sitoen. Saryu thought he heard this story from the head maid earlier. Eaton, still crying, said at Sitoen's previous residence, the treatment was terrible. She wasn't even given proper meals. Clothes sent to laundry were torn apart. Even small items were broken. She endured that for 2 years. Eaton said her lady had finally found happiness. Saryu thought that even though she went through such terrible things, Sitoen didn't show any sign of it at all. The head maid said to offer words of comfort, but he didn't like approaching someone who was acting like they hadn't been hurt and saying, "You're really suffering, aren't you?" based on mere speculation. Sitoen said, Prince, thank you so much for everything. Not only did he throw her a lifeline at the engagement ceremony with Prince Arios, but he even asked her to be his consort. Saryu, in panic, said no, that if she was going to say that, then he should be the one. A prince in name only, getting engaged to a bear-like man like him, and he apologized. Sitoen was stunned and said she knew it. He was exactly the person she imagined, and he truly hadn't changed at all. Saryu, stunned with a tense face, asked, huh? Had they met somewhere before? Sitoen asked if it was really okay for it to be her. Saryu, in panic, said why, of course, really satisfied, or rather, she was too good for him, yes. Sitoen smiled. Saryu thought, oops, that's bad. stood up and thought Raoul would scold him. He said, well, he should excuse himself soon. Sitoen clenched her fist, and Saryu asked, Sitoen asked if the dragon mark bothered him. Saryu, stunned, said if he said it didn't bother him, that would be a lie, but not that much. Sitoen asked, did he have to see it? Saryu said, no. Sitoen, shaking, asked disgustingly, didn't he think that? Saryu stared at her and said, no, not really. He thought he was curious about what it looked like, but calling a culture that another country had cherished disgusting, who would say such a thing? Sitoen, still shaking, said some gentleman apparently thought it was disgusting to even look at, like that guy. Saryu was stunned and thought of Prince Arios, thinking, that bastard. He told Sitoen that dragons were essential when talking about the kingdom of Tanya. He thought those with dragon marks that represented dragons were precious, and he didn't think anything beyond that. To not hurt her, he gave her the kindest smile of his life and said that if Sitoen didn't mind, would she show it to him? Sitoen blushed hard and thought he wanted to see it. Saryu thought, what's this reaction? Did he say something strange? Sitoen said, she'd like to show him, but she wasn't mentally prepared yet. Sitoen, while blushing hard, said it was, here. Saryu, blushing, thought, that's the chest valley. He shouted he was sorry. That's not, good. If he saw it now, that would be bad indeed. He thought no good. Improper fantasies are, Sitoen said if the prince insisted, and undid her nightgown thread. Her clothes dropped to the floor, and she asked if he would like to see it. Saryu, blushing hard as hell, shouted, ooh-ah, and thought, time to retreat. He couldn't do this anymore. He told Sitoen, well then, see you tomorrow, and left the room blushing. Outside, Butler and Raoul were waiting, and they were angry, asking why his face was all red, and what he was doing, Captain. Saryu said it was a misunderstanding. Sitoen smiled, touched her chest, and blushed. Outside the palace, a carriage arrived, and someone said, so this was the woman who captured his dear friend's heart. A man walked out of it and said he looked forward to meeting her.
By the way, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider liking and subscribing, pretty please?